Picture this, you've dreamed of owning an Hermès Birkin or Kelly for as long as you can remember, imagining the moment you finally walk through the boutique doors, are led by a discreet salesperson into some exclusive backroom, and are presented with a pristine treasure that supposedly took artisans hours upon hours to craft in the romantic heart of France. You're handed a sleek box, and as you lift the tissue paper, you feel a rush of pride. After all, many consider these handbags an unstoppable symbol of status, style, and tradition. That's the timeless fantasy Hermès has sold to millions around the world, telling us each Birkin is painstakingly built by highly trained French artisans. But what if that fairy tale is only half the story, or worse, not true at all? In the past few months, rumors have become full-blown bombshells.
It starts with 30 distinct cuts of leather and can take 20 hours to complete, 4 hours for just the handle. Put the finishing touches on a Kelly, the most difficult bag to build. Artisans rely on their training and muscle memory to make every bag.
And the Hermès brand faces some of the most shocking allegations in modern luxury history. The possibility that these pricey bags are secretly assembled in Chinese factories, shipped to France for the tiniest finishing touches, then labeled Made in France. And if that's not scandalous enough, the claim now is that a former Hermès insider has teamed up with the same Chinese manufacturers who were once forced into silence, not just to spill the tea, but to bring the entire Hermès empire to its knees. There are dozens if not hundreds of videos and social media posts swirling about these accusations, some showing alleged unmarked factories, others flaunting side-by-side comparisons of authentic Hermès bags and suspiciously similar dupes. If you scroll through TikTok, you might find a Chinese craftsman pointing to hardware and stitching, declaring it identical to the original.
There's a lot of skill to turn it and get it on the right way.
Il y a des bouchées, des bacs plus 4, 5, 6, on en a.
At first, many folks dismiss these posts as yet another wave of conspiracy theories aimed at tarnishing a brand's reputation. After all, Hermès has always made a show of its artisanal roots, like marketing snippets of an expert who spent 4 years mastering one technique to create the iconic handle or that signature stitch. But then something shifted. That shift happened when a so-called whistleblower, someone who allegedly worked on the inside, possibly in the realm of supply chain logistics or production oversight, stepped forward with a trove of information. According to them, Hermès had indeed been outsourcing major parts of production to China for years, hiding that truth behind non-disclosure agreements and cleverly orchestrated marketing. Suddenly, those random factory footage clips no longer seemed so random. They looked more like puzzle pieces sliding into place. It gets even more jaw-dropping. Rather than let the whistleblower's statements stand alone, a group of Chinese manufacturers that was once threatened with lawsuits and intimidation by Hermès decided they'd had enough. They corroborated the whistleblower's story, producing documents they claimed prove entire sets of Birkin or Kelly bags are staged in China, from cutting the leather to stitching each panel. These are then shipped to France, where a minimal finishing flourish, maybe adding a rivet, a brand stamp, or a specific stitch or two occurs on French soil. In doing so, Hermès might more or less be able to claim the bag is made in France under certain legal thresholds, and then charge a jaw-dropping $20,000 or $30,000 per item. In standard times, that might be an explosive revelation by itself, but events took a bigger turn when the whistleblower and the factories formed a united front. We're talking about reams of alleged shipping logs, production schedules, and internal memos that directly conflict with Hermès' carefully cultivated story of elite French workshops. If that inside-outside partnership is genuine, it's the biggest nightmare scenario for a luxury brand built on the romantic notion of 100% local craft. Credibility has always been crucial to Hermès. Their entire marketing strategy revolves around exclusivity and the idea that these bags are so painstaking to produce that one artisan handles each bag from start to finish. By the time the public started hearing these claims and details, seeing the numbers, the alleged Chinese factory footage, and hearing from past employees that Hermès might only do the final touch in France, it was as though a trapdoor had opened beneath the brand's pristine feet. Now, according to the transcript from an exposed by Tapping In Now, the whistleblower indicates that Hermès turned to these outsourcing production methods not only for financial reasons, but also to keep up with surging demand. In social media circles, Hermès is infamous for artificially limiting supply, feeding the hype that these bags are so rare you might wait a year or longer just to see one offered to you. The narrative has always been, it takes specialized skill. It's a labor-intensive process. There's only so many artisans who can do it, and that's why the price is extraordinarily high. But once you start suspecting that a lot of the grunt work, especially the time-consuming cutting, stitching, and assembly might be happening on an assembly line in, say, Dongguan, you begin to feel the sense of betrayal as a consumer or collector. The entire ideology that your purchase was scarce and meticulously handcrafted starts to crumble. So, how did Hermès respond to these accusations? According to the transcript, Hermès did what many big luxury houses do when confronted with a scandal of this magnitude. They lawyered up. Rather than say, we completely deny these claims and here's proof of our local craftsmanship, they apparently launched a flurry of legal attacks aimed squarely at the very factories that tried to speak out. To the average observer, this has a whiff of trying to silence the truth. Because if Hermès had absolutely nothing to hide, you might expect them to open the doors of those mythical French workshops to cameras, inviting transparency. Instead, they're entangled in lawsuits, slamming the whistleblower for violating NDAs, and accusing the Chinese manufacturers of breaching confidentiality agreements and misusing intellectual property. That smacks of desperation to many outraged fans, and ironically, it only draws more spotlight on the allegations. Some legal experts in the fashion world have weighed in, speculating that Hermès might be left with no choice but to settle and bury these stories. But with the whistleblower and multiple factory owners all singing the same tune, it's tough to imagine that this scandal will just quietly vanish. Meanwhile, the impact on loyal Hermès customers is downright volcanic. For many of them, acquiring a Birkin after months or years on a waitlist is a proud badge of honor. They want to believe that every inch of that bag is a direct reflection of French heritage, from the carefully tanned leather to the artisanal stitching, learning that a big chunk or possibly all of that craftsmanship might be outsourced to a cheaper labor market can feel like a punch to the gut. It's not merely about paying a high price, it's about paying for a dream. And if the dream turns out to be a curated marketing ploy, the emotional fury can be overwhelming. On TikTok, YouTube, and handbag forums, people have expressed feelings of betrayal. Some owners are demanding refunds. Others are putting their Hermès pieces up for sale. A few even vow never to purchase from the brand again, saying they don't want to continue supporting a company that may have lied to them. This is the kind of reputational fallout that can take decades to mend. If it's even mendable at all, the transcript also highlights a broader conversation. If the pinnacle of French luxury might be operating in this manner, what about other iconic labels? Looking at you, Louis Vuitton, Chanel, Dior, and Prada. We've heard rumors for years about partial outsourcing and hidden supply chains. But Hermès was always the supposed gold standard of authenticity and transparent craft. If Hermès is vulnerable, could it be that the entire sector is built to some degree on illusions of heritage? Experts suggest we may see a ripple effect, with consumers demanding more rigorous proof of origin. Some talk about blockchain solutions that let you trace exactly where each seam was stitched. Others call for stricter legal definitions of what made in France actually requires beyond minimal finishing. Either way, the shockwaves are real and every brand must be sweating if they've engaged in similar practices. Ironically, the transcript reveals that when these allegations went public, Hermès tried to pivot the blame on these same manufacturers, claiming they were tarnishing brand reputation. Instead of reversing public opinion, it made Hermès look more opportunistic, like a huge corporate entity lashing out at smaller factories that helped produce their goods in the first place. No matter the outcome of the ongoing legal scuffles, some statements from factory owners have already exposed internal memos that purportedly show Hermès reps instructing them to adopt European stitching patterns, not to mention how staff were told to avoid any references to made in China on the final product. If these memos are verified in court, it's a major blow that crosses the line from rumor to verifiable evidence. Another angle to all this is the global conversation about consumer activism. In the transcript, you get the sense that once people realized Hermès might be guilty of luxury brand washing, they didn't just shrug it off. They started talking on public forums, launching threads and investigations of their own. Some even started cutting open the bags, analyzing the layers of leather, comparing them to known Chinese source materials. It's like a crowdsourced Detective Mission shining a spotlight on how globalized manufacturing has become in the high-end market. That wave of skepticism isn't going away. In fact, it's growing as more media outlets pick up the story and vloggers do side-by-side tests of alleged made in China Birkins and the authentic ones from Hermès boutiques. All of this leads to the burning question: is Hermès in real, lasting trouble, or is this just a passing scandal the brand can weather by leaning on its centuries-old prestige? The transcript puts to bed any idea that this will blow over easily. One reason is that the potential legal ramifications are enormous if Hermès is found to be mislabeling their products in any country with strict consumer protection laws. Lawsuits from disgruntled customers, brand devaluation, and restitution claims could cost them millions, maybe billions, if it snowballs. And there's also the intangible cost: brand trust. Luxury thrives on people believing they're buying something inherently special. Once they see behind the curtain that they might just be paying for cleverly spun marketing, that trust becomes desperately hard to rebuild. This fiasco also opens up a new frontier in brand accountability. We're used to controversies around fast fashion and poor worker conditions in places like Bangladesh or Vietnam. But Hermès? A brand that has prided itself on the notion that each bag is like a piece of wearable art, forged in a classic French workshop steeped in tradition? For many consumers, this is a sign that the time for illusions is over. The new generation demands transparency, ethical sourcing, and tangible proof that a label means something beyond just words. The transcript's final statements revolve around that synergy between the Hermès whistleblower and the Chinese manufacturers. It might be transformative for the entire luxury sector. Never before has there been such a powerful inside-out collaboration, pulling the rug out from under. A brand at both ends. The insider provided the knowledge of how Hermès structures its deals, and the manufacturers contributed the day-to-day reality of how and where the bags were actually made. Together, they painted a bright neon arrow pointing directly at alleged hypocrisy. And it's not just talk, they backed it up with receipts. That's one reason this case is so uniquely potent and why other big brands are likely hunkered down, crossing their fingers, praying that no such alliance forms against them. Because if consumers see these sides come together with verifiable proof, that's the endgame for any brand's carefully curated story. Ultimately, the topic swirling around social circles now is transformation, whether Hermès and other houses can bounce back by simply paying some legal fees and continuing business as usual, or whether they'll be forced to undergo a complete metamorphosis in how they source and manufacture. Many smaller ethical or direct-to-consumer luxury brands are seizing the moment, promoting their transparent approach. They're plastering supply chain transparency on newsletters, explaining exactly which of their items is made in which workshop by which craftsperson. It's an appeal to the outraged consumer. You'll never have to doubt us the way you apparently have to doubt Hermès. Looking at the bigger picture, it's entirely plausible that once these allegations and lawsuits simmer down, we'll see new laws or at least new consumer behaviors that demand authenticity beyond marketing slogans. Maybe brands will adopt digital passports for each bag so you can see chain of custody from raw leather to final product. Or maybe we'll see heightened consumer skepticism, ironically driving up the resale market for truly old vintage Birkins that people believe genuinely were made in France back in the day, before all these factory expansions took hold. No matter how you slice it, Hermès stands at a cliff's edge. Its identity, so carefully built since the mid-19th century, is under siege. The question no longer is, are these claims true? It's, what do we do now that the claims are out there? With multiple factories and a whistleblower giving the same account of deception? The brand's classic response silence and legal intimidation might have worked in decades past, but in the era of social media and unstoppable viral news, it's only fueling the controversy. So where do we leave this? Possibly with the biggest question of all, will Hermès come clean in a radical move to save face? Publicly acknowledging that yes, they do outsource some or many parts overseas? Or will they double down, fighting the whistleblower and the manufacturers in court, risking that more secrets get dragged into the open? For now, the entire luxury community is watching with bated breath, because we might be witnessing a fundamental shift in an industry that has always banked on secrecy. If this scandal shakes the walls of Hermès, it could reshape the concept of made in France for every single high-end label. And let's be honest, part of the allure of these big-ticket items was always the mystique. If that mystique dissolves under legal depositions and leaked factory footage, then perhaps the age of unattainable French luxury might truly be ending. Which brings us to our final note. As a viewer, a consumer, or even a curious bystander, you might walk away from all this with a newfound skepticism. Next time you see a brand boasting about handcrafted, artisanal techniques, you might wonder about the real story behind the price tag. Perhaps you'll wait for genuine transparency from companies instead of just trusting a polished marketing campaign. The Hermès scandal is more than just a shock. It's a cautionary tale of what happens when an empire built on exclusivity gets shaken by those who know the real secrets behind the scenes. And that's where we'll wrap up for now. Thanks for sticking with me through this deep dive into one of the most riveting controversies in the high fashion world right now. If this story has you thinking twice about luxury labels and how they might really operate, then it's done its job. Let me know in the comments what you believe. Do you think Hermès can recover from this? Or are we watching the moment its kingdom starts to crumble? If you like this deep dive, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest updates on this case and other shocking reveals in the world of fashion. Until next time, question everything, stay curious, and remember, when a brand that thrives on mystique is suddenly dragged into the light, the truth can be more extraordinary than the marketing itself.